check, check. Okay. Good evening, friends. My name is Jeremy Rutledge, and I'm senior pastor here at Circular Congregational Church, and it's just my delight to welcome you on site and online to our 2022 fall lectures in Theology and Ethics. It has been a while since we've been able to get together in person, and I realized as I wrote this introduction how to do it. So there are some logistical pieces I forgot about that I'd like to share with you briefly as we begin for those who are on site. If you're joining us here in the sanctuary, there's a restroom just back here. There is water out in the back if you need it. And for all, our format will be roughly 7 to 7:45. Carol will be presenting to us. Then she and I will have a few minutes of dialogue, and then we'll invite questions from the audience here on site and also online. If you're online, this is new to us. If you'd like to ask a question, I'm going to give you an email address now, and I'll also give it to you at the end of the talk. You can email your question. Catherine will text it to me, and we'll do our very best to receive questions from the group who's here on site and also from you online. That email address is circular@circularchurch.org. I'll say that one more time. If you'd like to email a question, it's circular@circularchurch.org. So with that logistical information, let me return to my introduction. This lecture series was inaugurated in 2015 by the late Professor James Cone. We dreamed of bringing the finest scholars in the country to this place and letting their philosophy and theology inspire and inform our work together. We made the lectures free and open to all, and we gather in the same spirit tonight. These lectures are for everyone. Our hope is that the rigorous thinking we do together will shape our action in the world, action for racial and environmental justice, action for a world where all may flourish. We wouldn't be here tonight without the dedicated work of many, so let us begin with a word of thanks to Catherine Cullinan, Ted Morrow, and our administrative staff. Thanks to Francis Ard, J.C. Davidson, and our technical team. Thanks to Peggy Welty and our ushers and hospitality team, and a special word of thanks to our Circular Church Endowment Board for generously underwriting these lectures so that everyone might be a part of them and no one left out. With that, let me introduce you to our distinguished guest speaker for this evening. Carol Wainwright is a singular voice working at the intersection of racial and environmental justice. In her scholarship, she brings Black voices and lived experiences into conversation with a deeply religious naturalism. In her most recent book, Black Lives and Sacred Humanity, Toward an African American Religious Naturalism, she draws from Anna Julia Cooper, W.E.B. Du Bois, and James Baldwin as she works out an embodied theology that reveres the natural world and all the dear ones with whom we share it. Carol is professor of the philosophy of religion at Bucknell University. She is the recipient of an Oxford University Fellowship in Religion and Science, a Science and Religion grant from the John Templeton Foundation, and a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Her previous works include Post-Structuralism, Feminism, and Religion, Triangulating Positions, and The Legacy of Anne Conway, Reverberations from a Mystical Naturalism. Carol is a frequent contributor to Zygon, the Journal of Religion and Science, the American Journal of Theology and Philosophy, Philosophia Africana, and Religion and Public Life. I think it may be clear from even this brief introduction that Carol is a brilliant thinker, but perhaps most importantly, she is a delightful person and an engaging conversation partner. Friends, we are so fortunate to to have Carol with us tonight to guide us with her intellect, insight, and passion, and to help us think about the work ahead. Will you join me in welcoming to Charleston our friend and teacher, Carol Wainwright.
I'll be with you in a moment. I want to turn on my PowerPoint. Ready? Okay. Well, Jeremy, that's quite an introduction. I thank you. I wish you all could see me smiling behind this mask because it's such a delight to be with you. I'm really honored to be here to share with you some of my work in religious naturalism. And I look forward to engaging your questions and comments at the end of my presentation. Before beginning, however, I do want to pause to thank Jeremy for extending this gracious invitation to participate in Circular Congregational Church's prestigious lecture series, for his kind introduction, and especially for his exquisite warm hospitality and our new friendship. And I also offer my deep appreciation to Catherine for managing the logistical matters with impeccable efficiency and warmth, to Francis for his assistance with the technology, to Charlotte and all others at Circular Congregational Church who have contributed generously and greatly to making my visit seamless, comfortable, and lovely. And it's a pleasure to be with you here in Charleston. So in my presentation today, I offer for your consideration get used to the technology. A meditation on the theme of wonder that is grounded in the theoretical principles of religious naturalism. The model of religious naturalism that I introduce advances a conception of the human that encourages our transformative engagement with each other and with the more than human world that constitute our existence. In doing so, I suggest that religious naturalism facilitates the turn to wonder. What I identify as wonder basically are aesthetic, ethical responses associated with a particular mode of existing in the world. In this modality, we actively affirm who and what we are as particular life forms who are attentive to how we become human in a particular manner. In this modality, humans creatively affirm our constitutive relationality and our embeddedness in materiality. And by default, we embrace life in all of its splendor and complexity while seeking to alleviate as much as possible excruciating forms of suffering. After offering a theoretical overview of wonder, let's see, this is not, sorry, let me see what's going on here. Yes. So that was for what I just said, and we're getting used to technology here. Let me see if I can do it. Okay, thank you. After offering a theoretical overview of wonder, I then locate its fuller meaning in the poetic, philosophic expressions of select iconic American figures. Individually and collectively, these visionaries, writers, and poets have countered a hegemonic narrative of humans standing outside of nature and managing nature to our own benefit. Their works collectively help to reinscript the human as part of life's complex web of cosmic and cultural meaning. I now begin by introducing religious naturalism. For some of you, this might be a new term, and you might ask, what exactly is religious naturalism? It's an emergent set of varied perspectives that asserts any truths we are ever going to discover and meaning in life we are ever to uncover are revealed to us through nature. As a model of religiosity, religious naturalism departs from traditional Western models in several respects. It is grounded in the observational scientific conviction that nature is ultimate, and it features a communal ontology. At the heart of this ecologically based worldview, in all of its variants, is a basic conviction. Any truths we are ever going to discover and any meaning in life we should uncover are revealed to us through the natural order. Thus, the qualifier religious in religious naturalism affirms the natural world as the center of humans' most significant experiences and understandings. One crucial idea of religious naturalism is emergence. According to one of the renowned proponents of religious naturalism, Ursula Goodenough, who has spoken here, by the way, and she's the founder of Religious Naturalist Association, of which I am a member. According to Ursula, emergent properties arise as a consequence of relationships. For example, the relationships between water molecules that generate a snowflake, or the relationships between neurons that generate a memory. Emergent properties also give rise to yet more emergent properties, generating the vast complexity of our present-day cosmic, biological, ecological, and cultural contexts. Religious naturalism thus encourages humans to reflect meaningfully on the emergence of matter, and especially life, from the Big Bang forward, promoting an understanding of myriad nature as complex processes of becoming. Another central theme of religious naturalism that I highlight tonight is that humans are simply one branch of a seemingly endless natural cosmos. Thus, understanding the deep history of the cosmos is profoundly important for comprehending the materiality of being human, of being alive in the manner in which we currently find ourselves. As Loya Rue, another major proponent of religious naturalism, observes, humans are a composite of many interlocking natural systems: atomic, molecular, biochemical, anatomical, and ecological, apart from which human existence is incomprehensible. So humans are essentially natural byproducts of other natural processes, and we're intimate participants with them. In short, as Michael Fox observes in this passage, our bodies contain the mineral elements or primordial rocks. Our very cells share the same historically evolved components as those of grasses and trees. Our brains contain the basic neural core of reptile, bird, and fellow mammal. We are also structured by relationality. As this passage from Ursula Goodenough observes, humans are by our very constitution relational beings. I'm going to repeat that. By our very constitution, we're relational beings. That's going to be an important thing to remember tonight. And our wholeness occurs within a matrix of complex interconnectedness in ways of conjoining with others that transform us. In short, we belong to an expansive, biotic community. In this wider ecological context, humans with other organisms are bound together in a web of mutual interdependence. And in this particular context, I pause to emphasize an important point. Our humanity is not a given, but rather it's an achievement. So I want to emphasize we actually become human in a particular manner. So from a strictly biological perspective, humans are organisms that have slowly evolved by a process of natural selection from earlier primates. From one generation to another, the species that is alive now has gradually adapted to changing environments so that it could continue to survive. According to the strict biological account, our animality, from this perspective, is living under the influence of genes, instincts, and emotions, with a prime directive to survive and procreate. Yet, this minimalist approach fails to consider what some cognitive scientists, many humanists, philosophers, and religionists tend to accentuate, and that is our own personal experience of what it is like to be an experiencing human being. As I have discussed elsewhere and published about, we become human or actualize ourselves as human beings in this sense. There's an awareness and a desire to be more than a conglomeration of pulsating cells. Our humanity is not reducible to organizational patterns or processes dominated by brain systems, nor is our humanity structured solely by DNA, diet, behavior, and the environment. Rather, in positing fundamental questions of value, meaning, and purpose to our existence, human animals become human beings or human destinies. Our coming to be human destinies is structured by a crucial question: how do we come to terms with life? How do we come to terms with life? In my reading, this fundamental question is one that requires our rapt attention as it facilitates the turn to wonder. So, what do I mean by wonder? It's not merely intellectual curiosity or emotional awe at the facts of life out there, but rather a particular mode of existing, of being in the universe. And in this modality, we are actively attentive to affirming who and what we are. In this modality, humans creatively affirm our constitutive relationality and our embeddedness in materiality. This evocation of wonder grasps what Neil deGrasse Tyson affirms in this fascinating, mind-boggling manner. Atoms in our bodies trace to remnants of exploded stars. My friends, we are stardust. We are alive in the universe, and the universe is alive within us. The atoms of our bodies are traceable to stars that manufactured themselves in their cores and exploded these enriched ingredients across our galaxy billions of years ago. For this reason, we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world. We are chemically connected to all molecules on Earth, and we are atomically connected to all atoms in the universe. We are not figuratively, but literally stardust. So, my fuller sense of wonder then is living out of this awareness of who and what we are. We are literally stardust. And in doing so, we recognize that humans are life forms that are participants within a complex set of natural, material, relational processes that constitute reality. In this modality, we pause, grasp, and are moved by the sheer facticity that all humans also belong to the flow of life itself. Indeed, each of us participates in life grandeur. And you note I said each of us, because that's going to be important to recognize shortly as well. With this expansive sense of how we are embedded in miraculous life, wonder then becomes the practice of honoring the fullness or the more of life. There is, in this particular context, a commitment to what Peter Van Ness affirms as the spiritual dimension in life, and that is the embodied task of realizing one's truest self in the context of reality apprehended as a cosmic totality. When we practice this type of spirituality, this type of embodied spirituality, we are seeking to attain an optimal relationship between what we truly are and everything that is. This understanding has also been expressed by the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead in the 1930s. He offers another philosophical way of understanding the truths that I've just highlighted, the science. According to process thought, all reality consists of processes rather than material objects. And processes are best defined by their relations with other processes. Thus, rejecting the theory at that time, which was popular when Whitehead was writing, that reality is fundamentally constructed by bits of matter that exist independently of one another. In the language of process philosophy, therefore, we affirm that we belong to one another. We belong to one another. And this particular principle is expressed by the principle of internal relations. According to this principle, what we are made up of are a host of entangling, ever-changing relationships, all of which leave their traces on our life from its beginning to its end. At the same time, each of us are, within the context of those relationships, creative agents who can make a difference, great or small, in the lives of others, in the immediate present and in the long-range future. So what I would like to do now is to focus a bit on the type of ethics that we can glean from these theoretical ideas. The wonder that I'm trying to have us think about basically envision intimate connections or forms of intimacy within myriad nature, which we are a part. It celebrates humans living, experiencing, and seeing differently as relational, material beings, in marked contrast from some of the dominant set of values operative in the United States today. And those dominant values are the isms, racism, xenophobia, classism, all of the ways in which we as a nation are highlighting alienating forms of relationality versus the more robust forms that I've been highlighting. And I want to emphasize here, you see the bottom, wonder cannot be realized in the abstract, it must be lived, as Jeremy highlighted at the beginning. You have to enact these values and not just think them or feel them. They must be put into practice. So one particular current voice who's very helpful in this context is Robin Wall Kimmerer. Her work is helpful because she's a botanist and she's also an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. She has urged dominant settler cultures to redefine their evolving relationship with nature, forging new values and modes of valuation appropriate to our sense of the more than human world. In short, Kimmerer to a heightened sense of wonder of our entanglement with the more than human worlds that surround and even support us. In this beautiful passage, she elaborates on the gift of strawberries to humans. She says, the plant has in fact been up all night assembling little packets of sugar and seeds and fragrance and color, because when it does so, its evolutionary fitness is increased. When it is successful in enticing an animal such as me to disperse its fruit, its genes for making yumminess are passed on to ensuing generations with a higher frequency than those of the plant whose berries were inferior. What I mean, of course, is that our human relationship with strawberries is transformed by our choice of perspective. It is human perception that makes the world a gift. When we view the world this way, strawberries and humans are transformed. So when we begin to see in this expanded way that Kimmerer suggests, we can appreciate our embeddedness in a complex matrix of becoming and experiencing that is part of wider nature itself. Another particular voice that would be helpful here to think about how to understand our intimate engagement with more than human nature is Merlin Shadrake. He has studied fungi, and he describes spheres of more than human communication that reveal intimate interactions between organisms underground. Fungi are fascinating to Sheldrake because they provide an excellent case study into how organisms use their chemical senses, featured in distinct olfactory systems, to explore and make sense of their environments. He states, plants, fungi, and animals all use similar types of receptors to detect. When molecules bind to these receptors, they trigger a signaling cascade. One molecule triggers a cellular change, which triggers a bigger change, and so on. In this way, small causes can ripple into large effects. So when humans ingest and smell mushrooms and fungi, we can detect some compounds as low a concentration as 34,000 molecules in 1 square centimeter, the equivalent of a single drop of water in 20,000 Olympic swimming pools. What does this suggest? Basically, what Sheldrake is suggesting is that his study into fungi gives us remarkable insight into just how intimately entangled we are in more than human nature. Another way of expressing our intimate forms of engagement. With the capacity to smell, with the human capacity to smell, we wondrously participate in the molecular discourse fungi use to organize much of their existence. These examples by Kimmerer and Sheldrake bring to mind a really cool notion in religious naturalism known as metaphysical perspectivism, which holds that the world humans inhabit has a plurality of entities, each with its own individuality and particularity of expression. Accordingly, everything that exists in the world has a distinctive perspective on everything else, as depicted in this passage by Donald Crosby, another religious naturalist. All the elemental particles, atoms, molecules, compounds, inorganic and organic entities, and combinations of those entities, including human beings and their histories, cultures, and societies. And all of the actions, reactions, functions, qualities, and traits of those particular beings and their relations are included. No two perspectives or systems of them are exactly alike. This type of epistemology that I've just highlighted can become an ethical principle that grounds and enriches how we can live in wonder, as I suggest here. Let us be attentive to how we can become aware of and embrace the deeper truth that humans are essentially our relationships. Who and what we are our relationships. I cannot emphasize that enough. And we are constituted by our relationality. We then must become receptive to perceived differences among us and celebrate the biodiversity of our species. Celebrate the biodiversity of our species. Again, no isms. And you know, we're really good at that, are we not? In differentiating between ourselves, who's better, who's less. This is what I'm trying to get at with this technical speech. It's good church language here. Love, love, love. We become curious about the possibilities that you and we belong together, that we can create together. And we seek to enhance our constitutive relationship rather than diminish it. We seek to expand robust forms of relationality rather than impoverished, alienated forms of relationality. So, with this in mind, I would like to share with you some poetic articulations of this dry theoretical discourse that I've given you. And I thank you for bearing with me. This is the Academy coming to you. Thank you. Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets. Okay, I see some nods here, wonderful. She's a religious naturalist, whether she claims it or not. In this poem, Sleeping in the Forest, Oliver highlights, Sleeping in the Forest. In this poem, Oliver highlights the intensely sensuous bodily experiences of the forest inhabitants that reveal subjectivities that do not depend on the typical culture-nature divide that is featured largely in much American folklore and cultural narratives. I'll just read. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars, but my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. The state of sleeping, which is an intimate activity, allows us to see that humans are already immersed and entangled with the smaller worlds upon which we depend. Another author, Annie Dillard, another favorite of mine, touches on a similar theme in her work, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, when she's describing her experiences in a remote part of the Blue Ridge Mountains, weaving together observations of the surrounding landscape with personal longings and musings. Dillard speaks of dwelling differently because she also sees differently as the mountainous landscape. In other words, she sees as the mountain sees. She takes on a different perspective. She observes, intricacy is that which is given from the beginning, the birthright, and in intricacy is the hardiness of complexity that ensures against the failure of all life. This is our heritage, the piebald landscape of time. We walk around we see a shred of the infinite possible combinations of an infinite variety of forms. As with Oliver, Dillard's reflections revealed a profound perspectivism, suggesting that our limited human perspective is always a part of a multiplicity of perspectives. Our own limited human perspective is one among many perspectives in this larger context of nature. She writes, I am sitting under a sycamore tree, a sycamore by Tinker Creek. I am really here, alive on the intricate earth under the trees. But under me, directly under the weight of my body on the grass, are other creatures, just as real, for whom also this moment, this tree is it. Another wonderful figure in the 19th century, Walt Whitman, in Leaves of Grass, offered a poetic rendering of humanity's entanglement with more than human life. Whitman uses erotic immateriality as found in his effusive language, affirming our basic interconnectedness. I celebrate myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. And in another section of Leaves of Grass, he writes, I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. As a site of illumination, Whitman's intimate experiences with one small spear of grass discloses an essentially relational self that can resist solipsistic tendencies and egoistic impulses. There's no isolated entity who stands over against the fields of interaction. Another important figure is Anna Julia Cooper. I'll be with you. Who is an early 20th century figure, African American from North Carolina. Speaking to her white peers, Cooper emphasized egalitarian principles at work in nature to speak out during her time of racial superiority in terms of what we're now calling white supremacy. In one essay featured in her collected volume, A Voice from the South, Cooper asserts, now I need not say that peace produced by suppression is neither natural nor desirable. Despotism is not one of the ideas that humanity has copied from nature. And my friends, these are people speaking in the 19th century. We are inheriting their legacies here. Encountering the skepticism and positivism of various European philosophers who saw humanity as nothing more than a conglomeration of cells, best explained by scientific empiricism, Cooper also re-envisioned the human as an important finite realm constituting a unique value-laden matrix of potentiality within the unfolding of cosmic, infinite possibilities. And what's fascinating and unique about Cooper's voice at this time is that she applied this vision of nature to racial, gender, and class injustices, which she said were unnatural impositions on humanity's innate yearnings of achieving or becoming our humanity in infinite ways. Brilliant insights from these various figures. Her historical example and her sensibilities anticipate and strengthen the case for an eco-aesthetic ethics that addresses justice for myriad nature, injustices between human beings, and injustice between human beings and more than human nature. It's not either or, it's both and. Both and. From this particular perspective, we come to a term that Wendell Berry has highlighted that he calls propriety. According to Berry, propriety describes the fitness of our conduct to our place or circumstances, even to our hopes. In other words, it affirms the fact that we humans are not alone. Our life inescapably affects other lives, which inextricably affect our life. So, in conclusion, I would like to say, as we are inspired by Cooper, Berry, Whitman, Dillard, and Oliver, I invite you to consider inhabiting a life of wonder. Or, if you're already living in wonder, to deepen that experience. In doing so, we remember a bit of wisdom articulated by religious naturalism. Humans are actually structured in our evolutionary capacities as biological organisms to love. We are structured, we are wired to love, my friends, and to create alternative systems of interaction and forms of relationality. When we do this, when we emphasize our mutual interdependence, we are compelled to act, to live, and wonder in a way that addresses intersectional forms of oppression. So I would like to say that let's consider wonder as aspirational living. In doing so, we want to recognize that when we're here in Charleston, let's also think about the realities and the injustices that proliferate around the globe. Whether we're speaking about the legacies of slavery and unjust wars, climate change, ecological crisis, species extinction, ocean acidification, international trade and immigration, poverty, human rights. It is so sad that the list is endless, isn't it? It's sad that we could go on and on and on. But in light of this, what we want to think about is that with a very humble and yet incessant aspiration to live in wonder, let us try to do our best, persist in our actions, invigorated by our moral imaginations. As Chet Ramo, another religious naturalist, suggests, last one. Sorry, this is it. Each of us is profoundly implicated in the functioning and fate of every other being on the planet, and ultimately, perhaps, throughout the universe. We are within the universe, and the universe is within us. Thank you for your time. I'm okay. Okay. tested.
Thank you so much, Carol, for your presentation and for your time with us. And so this is a time for a few minutes of conversation, and then we'll open it up to questions. So if you are, excuse me, I'm a little short of breath.
Okay.
If you're online and you have a question, again, you can email it to circular@circularchurch.org, and we'll do our best to get to it in a few minutes. So, Carol, I did want to ask just about how you found your own way to religious naturalism and what that journey was like for you, and maybe what was at stake along the way for you, however you want to come at that question.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy. One way by which I became a religious naturalist is that I'm from New England and also Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, and I've always lived near water. And where I'm at Bucknell, I live by a river, and I have another home in Rehoboth Beach where I live by the ocean. So my proximity to nature gave me this sense of awe and wonder that religious naturalists tend to highlight. And I also had a fascinating relationship with a parrot named Fern. My parrot, Fern, she lived with me for 25 years, and I had the most fascinating relationship with Fern. She just died a couple of years ago. And I learned so much from Fern. She was a feisty, orange-eyed parrot who would laugh and had the most fascinating joy of life. And in this relationship with her and my proximity to other natural processes and what was going on in the academic world, all of the things converged to make me understand the uniqueness of the religious naturalist perspective.
And I had just a couple other questions before we open it up, but I also wondered about religious naturalism's relationship to organized or institutional religious traditions. Of course, we're meeting here this evening in a Christian church. There are many traditions. I know that religious naturalism is a really good, viable option philosophically and in the academy. And there are some places that I think are suited to it in terms of religious communities of practice. I wondered if you had this sort of a general question, but about traditions that might fit well within, or traditions that may have challenges with, or thoughts on the relationship between organized religion and religious naturalist thinking.
Well, there are some religious naturalists who are Christian, and there are different models of religious naturalists. Those who are often Christian, and I forget Call's last name, but he just wrote a book on Christian naturalism, often use God language in a naturalistic way. They see no disjunction at all between what science is and what religion affirms, or what science affirms and their fundamental belief in the sacredness of the natural world. In the Jewish tradition, Kaplan. So there have been various people belonging to distinct religious traditions as they have historically evolved who have embraced religious naturalists. Religious naturalist is really a worldview, it's an orientation, and you can take from it what you want. So we don't feel that we have to tell other people how you can be a religious naturalist. You take from what we consider to be some of the more philosophical convictions, scientific convictions, and go with it. What we tend to emphasize, though, is how you live your life. How do you take these principles and affirm your interconnectedness with all? Whether or not you're scientifically oriented, the fact that you all know we are interdependent is something that is not just validated by science. No one here has come to the state that they're in without the help of others, without some type of dependency on others. So it's a common sense perspective that we really need each other and we belong together. So I hope that helps a little.
It does. It helps a lot. And I was drawn to it for what a big tent it can be. And it can bring in people from religious traditions, people who do not practice in a religious tradition, but it's an orientation. But I think one of the things at stake is where we are now. So we're meeting in a church in this country, in this moment. We're at sea level. You know, we have everything happening. And one of my persistent questions is what we're doing responding to the reality of the world we live in, and in a way that's responsible and kind of attuned.
That's excellent.
Sorry, that wasn't a question. That's just a thought. But
No, I was saying that's an excellent observation. Yes.
And my final question, so think of what your questions may be, friends, and I'll bring the microphone down. My final question has to do just with cultivating a life of wonder, or if you had personal spiritual practices of a religious naturalist, or things you would recommend in terms of just attuning ourselves to the natural world and maybe stepping away from some of the patterns and habits of our culture that may alienate us from the natural world.
I would invite people to slow down and pause and take in each moment and not be so caught up into doing. And I know that's sometimes hard, but especially in a place like this where you have a lot of natural beauty, it can be easy to stop, breathe, and take in the beauty of the moment. Relax your minds, relax your brains, and take in, say you're with a family member, take in the beauty of engaging that person in a moment. You're listening to someone, take in the awesomeness that you can actually understand. It's very simple ways of understanding that we're part of this complex, amazing set of relationalities. And when we can stop, pause, and take it in, you can't help but be sort of just how we're able to do everything we can do. And I think even on those very simple levels, we are in touch with that wonder that I'm trying to get us to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would that we could all slow down. Maybe we can, though, with some effort.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring the microphone down here, and I think the way we'll do it is I'll invite you to come to the microphone with a question, or if you need a microphone brought your way, you can raise a hand, and we'll make sure that happens. If you're online, again, if you email circular@circularchurch.org, we'll do our best to get to each question.
I also invite rebuttals and critiques as well.
Thank you for being here. I'm fascinated and in awe. But I would like to ask if you believe that our capitalistic and political and media-driven society in America, specifically, is intentionally placing a barrier between us and our connectedness to the world.
Yeah. Your name, please?
Jennifer.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Yeah, I would you stay there, because I'm going to ask you a question as well.
Okay.
Have more of a dialogue. I think that one could argue that certain forms of capitalism are definitely creating alienating forms of relationality. When one thinks that capital and for oneself at the expense of others is the basic value in life, and that you think your worthiness and your value as human beings is caught up into that, that definitely creates it. But there are also what some people call social capitalism, where you understand that it's okay to be creative and to make money, but what do you do with the money? Do you share? Do you help to generate opportunities for others? So I don't want to just bash capitalism. I think that there are different ways of understanding how you understand the complexity of economics and the structures in the United States. But I would definitely suggest that the dominant ways that we have inherited the understanding of capital have been somewhat denigrative, where it's individualistic and it's not that more socially communal way of understanding our commitment to each other and our interrelatedness with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and I was going to ask you, what do you think of your question?
It's in the context of I just retired, right? And I spent many years trying to work, right? Working and working and working. And I feel like that's the housing situation, the fact that you have to work a lot of hours in order to survive and raise your family. It seems like it could be seen as a systemic, codified way to separate us from the beauty that surrounds us.
Yes, which is why a lot of younger people are experimenting with communal intentional living, those types of communities. And many of you who have college-age students know that your adult children are coming back to live with. The economy is creating some of these. But we are inheriting years and years of this understanding of the market and especially how work becomes your basic way to survive. And it's going to take a lot to undo some of these sort of very deeply entrenched ways of understanding how we ought to live as a nation. This is one little small step in the right direction, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oops, watch it. Oops. I saw that. You okay?
Guys, thank you, Dr. Carol White. You've given us so much to get your mind and heart around. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that you're suggesting that the very DNA of the universe, the way everything works, kind of implies a beloved community. And that's a wonderful, that's just wonderful. You wonder, I wonder, why that hadn't occurred to me more profoundly and more consistently in my life. If that's the way things are, and I agree, I think that's the way the things are. But going back to kind of Jeremy's question, how is this to manifest itself in institutions, in a church? Would that be the death knell? Can you make a movement of this kind of thing? I guess that's my question. It's exciting, and it's tremendously hopeful that the DNA of the universe is on your side, but it's not automatic, at least it seems in human terms. And I don't know, I guess it's an unfair question, sort of, but is this just as we individuals practice this, that you follow what I'm trying to say? I'm being completely...
Not quite. I heard the first part where you agree with the overall schemata that I
Well, can
advanced.
this be a movement?
So what's your question?
Could you have a movement around this?
Yes.
Could the institution, I mean, that's the way things are normally done, but that's the way things are often undone, too.
So I invite you to go to the Religious Naturalist Association link, where you see people from around the world joining in from many different persuasions. Yes, it is a movement. And not only that, I'm a college professor. My students love this. This is given, so for me, part of the hope of the future is the young people who are being educated, who are understanding the science, who are understanding the philosophy, who are understanding the religious ethics associated with this worldview. It's a worldview, and saying, this makes sense to me. This makes sense to me. So the more we can educate people, the more you can share with people, the more you can talk about. And you do have to be scientifically literate to understand. I mean, what I mean by that, just the basics of what the scientific worldview, what philosophical worldview is suggesting. We are connected. We are interconnected. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is the latest, most available, convincing, compelling knowledge coming from our sciences and our philosophical worldviews. And so let's take that and go with it. And again, you don't really have to outline all of the theoretical, just understanding that it's about understanding love as an interconnected reality and putting that into practice. Why can't we just take it like on that level? Aren't you all doing this here at Circular in Charleston? So even on that level, to me, you can be part of the movement.
Well, that to me is part of the answer, that young people that you're teaching, they're responding to this. And I can see why they would. Why would anyone not respond
Exactly.
to this way of thinking?
Well, go spread the word.
Why, it seems like in the world, what is it about the human situation that makes some people so fearful?
You all tell me. I don't have an answer. I mean, that's a fascinating question. Why is it that some people resist what is common sense? Why is it some people want to hate? Who here can answer that? But for me, it's not trying to answer that as much as trying to address it through our actions.
Maybe I'm answering a little bit my own question. I'm thinking death, life and death is very much a part of this process and this relationality. It's not the end, it's just the continuing.
Yes, beautiful.
Not in the way, conventionally it's not. And maybe this misunderstanding about death is what holds us back sometimes.
Yeah, death is natural.
All right.
Yeah.
My name is Giovanni.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And come on behind me, Joe. I'm going to introduce a question from our online viewers,
Okay.
and then kind of intersperse with on-site. And I might add, as I look up the question, in terms of institutional religion, so this is a sympathetic community, many religious naturalists and many who resonate with what's being presented here, Carol and group. And also we've started a climate working group. We have lectures like this with the philosophy that informs our practice. We have engaged youth, many other things, regular nature walks and hikes. And it is very slow to change the culture of this place, to ground it in an earthy concern first and foremost. It's really hard work to try to get the culture to change, even when it's a sympathetic culture. So I just add that as someone with a little experience of it.
Yes, and this is why I said it's aspirational living.
Right.
It's what Sandra Hardin, I think, said, staying with the trouble.
Yeah.
Don't give up. I mean, if a former generation gave up, some of us wouldn't be here. So let's continue to work and try and do the best we can.
Amen, amen. And this comes from Bill online. Professor White, love the Academy coming here to Circular, gratitude for that. And could you please elaborate on the idea of honoring nature's sentience and perhaps point a way to how human beings can ethically come down from this idea of exceptionalism,
Yeah.
of humans as the crown of
Right.
creation?
Yeah, that's part of what is it Bill who asked?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill, that's what I was trying to get at by suggesting that we are not an isolated entity and part of this larger complex that we call nature. We are actually, if you understand the science, we're actually byproducts of earlier organic natural processes. So we owe our very existence to other natural processes. So we are not at the center. We are not at the center of the universe. And so in that way, we are rejecting that type of human exceptionalism that came about during the Enlightenment and during the Industrial Revolution, because earlier cultures, before people started using science against nature, were much more organic and much more in touch with the earth and the land. And many of you are coming from cultural traditions where land is important, and you cultivate a harmonious relationship with your more than human kin and the land and all. So this is a fairly recent development in human cultural evolution, and we are trying to return to it with the sophisticated understandings that we have given our forms of knowledge. So yes, we are rejecting human exceptionalism in many different forms. And one other form of it I have to emphasize, and I'll say more about this tomorrow, is the type of human exceptionalism that says some humans are better than others. Now, we'll be talking about that tomorrow when I talk a lot more about why United States needs religious naturalism. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Hi. My name is Jo. Thank you for being here. I feel very aligned with what you've shared with us tonight, and I'm very grateful for that, especially the relationships part, and the unfolding of like poets that just soothe my soul, and just I feel very uplifted by your shares, even your selections. I think Giovanni already touched to it before I got in the queue, but my concern is the barrier. So like what barriers are intrinsic or maybe not even intrinsic within us as to like adopting more of this framework? Like my question's around how to invite more people into this line of thinking. And my answer to my own question is like concerns about people's ability with ego and humility. And
Absolutely.
I was just wondering if like that's something you've even experienced within yourself and adopting more of this framework. Just like more key points as to kind of what that was like.
So did you have several questions? What was that last one about?
Well, I always go for the personal because I love people's stories,
Right.
but just any way in which like that's kind of been part of the work that you've done is just, like you're saying you're working with students, and maybe it's easier to work with younger people as they're still developing in a way.
Yeah.
But
Younger people have not grasped so much on earlier ideas that have been part of dominant culture. They're still exploring. They still are open to the possibility that they might not know. And when you get older, sometimes you think, I know the truth, blah, blah, blah. And I do think, though, that when you ask about my own personal convictions, I do believe love is a fundamental value in the universe. And I do believe that humans are evolutionarily equipped to love. What that means, we're equipped to embrace differences among us, within us. And why not do that? If you're in love with life, I'm in love with life. I love, exactly. And so my zeal, my desire, my passion for living, I try to enact with every person, everything that I encounter. To me, that's a simple, very simple principle. Every person you meet could be a universe that you have yet to discover. Don't go to that person with preconceived notions of who or what that person is, except that that person is stardust like you are. And why not explore? Why not open yourself up to the beautiful new ways of understanding yourself as you engage that person. So to me, even on that level, we can do this. We can do it. And no one's too old unless a person just doesn't want to, the person is stubborn, doesn't want to open her, himself, or themselves up to the novelty, the beauty that stands before them. So that would be my way of just talking about this in this sort of personal way. Thank you.
Hi, my name
Hi.
is Phil.
Your name is?
Philip.
Phil, okay.
Hi. Thanks for coming, and I think on my last few folks, you've kind of answered my question, but I'll pose it anyway, because I think it's a good segue, it sounds like, to your comments tomorrow. I guess if you had to put it in the shortest version possible, the question would be, is wonder enough? And it sounds to me that it's not, since what we're talking about is kind of equal respect for different forms of life, and probably the hardest thing is respect for other forms of human life. Mm-hmm. That's probably an even greater barrier than respect for the natural world. Mm-hmm. Because it does seem to me that it is very possible to have a sense of wonder at nature while not feeling any particular obligation for other people to be able to enjoy. Mm-hmm. If you can afford to take advantage of nature, or maybe if you have enough money, you can live in a well-preserved, protected place. Mm-hmm. And folks without that kind of money usually can't. They're usually amidst a lot of concrete.
Absolutely.
Or a lot of natural environment that's been turned to agribusiness. So I think that's probably a segue. I think that this idea, though, I don't know what's required exactly beyond wonder. Maybe it's reverence.
Well, I do think, your name again?
Philip.
Philip, I hope you heard in my talk today that wonder is not just sentimental, whatever. It's recognizing that one is part of a biodiverse species and honoring that. So that's part of what you're getting at. So wonder is not just having this lovely intellectual or emotional response. It's recognizing that we as a species are biodiverse and we must honor and enact those principles. So I'm with you on that. And that seems to be a little faint in my presentation today, but it's a huge part. It's a huge part of it. And we all know, in terms of U.S. history, alienating forms of relationality hurt. They're painful. So there's a lot of pain that we need to address with wonder. And when I say wonder, again, I don't want you, wonder is a way of being in the world. It's not something that you're projecting. It's who you are and how you exist in the world. That's my definition of wonder. And that means every opportunity you get, you should be enacting principles that validate the uniqueness of every single being you meet, whatever racial, gender, sex, class, identity that person might have. So that's part of it. I'm using it as beautiful language, but it really is a hard lesson that few people enact. So thank you.
Including a kind of painful recognition
Yes.
that I am doing harm to others.
Yes,
Which is
yes.
not something people mostly want to do.
Yes, thank you. And it's okay to celebrate even as we acknowledge the pain and the harm. But I meant it's not both and. We must do both. Too much, if you only focus on the negative, you'll be overcome by everything that's wrong. If you only focus on the positive, you won't acknowledge the challenges. So let's temper both, trying to keep ourselves alive and vibrant.
And I think we've got one more question from online, and then we can transition into a time of a social time. We've got a reception outdoors. And so let me just ask this one from Scott online, and he asks, it seems that religious naturalism is similar to animism, but coming from a scientific direction rather than a traditional or indigenous cultural perspective. Can you speak to that a little?
Is this Scott?
It is Scott, yes.
Yeah, very astute observation. It's actually, animism, for those of you who don't know, is one of the earliest forms of religiosity, going way, way back, where people felt that nature was imbued with some sort of vital energy or whatever. Is one of the earliest religious ways of being in the world. And so religious naturalism returns to that basic idea that nature is vital, understanding that we're a part of it, and it is supported by scientific, and I will also add philosophical forms of knowledge to that. So yes, Scott, you're absolutely on target with that. And religious naturalism is a compelling worldview that shows the best of religious values, philosophical coherency, and scientific verification. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much to Carol for being with us tonight and also tomorrow. And to those who are here and those gathered online, if you're with us on site, we're going to go out this door or this door, but right this way, there's a courtyard. Just follow the crowd, and there's a reception. You're invited to stay and talk, continue the conversation for a few more minutes. And then tomorrow we'll continue the lecture and conversation, and we'll be focusing, I believe, specifically on how this worldview and how this orientation relates to the struggle for racial justice. And we'll also be drawing from Anna Julia Cooper, James Baldwin, W.E.B. Du Bois, and I already have a question about the relationship between your ideas on wonder, Carol, and Baldwin's ideas on love. So we can have more great conversation tomorrow. Thanks for being with us, everyone, and we'll see you soon.